Hello and welcome to the AfroCreatives Radio, a platform where we travel across Africa in conversation using creative arts to input into our dialogue. This is our second season and it's exciting to be back on the AfroCreative Radio because this time we are going audio-visual. So we are very excited to be jumping into digital content that will have an audio and a visual aspect. And joining me today are three amazing people. We have Farai Ncube, who is from the British Council, and we have Moses Anibaba, and we have Patrick from the Old Mutual. So what I will do right now is, before we even jump into what we're talking about today, I will have the guests in the studio just introduce themselves and tell us a bit about their area of passion and expertise. And I will move from this direction, starting with you, Patrick, and we will come to me.
Thank you so much for the introduction. My name is Patrick Maseko, and I'm the Group Corporate Affairs and Entrepreneurship Officer at Old Mutual. Well, I'm also responsible for innovation, so as long as there's innovation and entrepreneurship in the title, it works well for me because it's where my passion is.
Thank you so much, Patrick.
Hello, I'm Farai Ncube. I'm the Head of Arts for South Africa and also Regional Lead for Culture Connect program in Sub Saharan Africa. I'm passionate about the arts. I believe in arts, in the power of how they can transform and add to our lives and also just bring us closer as people. And coupled to that is really pushing boundaries. Yes, I get bored when things are still like the same and same and same. So I really love to push boundaries, to test new waters, to take risks, and adding to that is entrepreneurship. I love money.
Who doesn't want money? Thanks so much, Farai. Moses, would you want to just jump in?
Yeah, thank you. It's great to be here. My name is Moses Anibaba. I'm the Regional Director for the British Council across Africa. My passion, well, I'm an investor in people. And, Africa is blessed with young people. And anybody worth their socks will know that, Africa and African youth is the future. And all my work, both with private sector, with the British Council, has always been towards that as well. So yeah, that's my passion.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to have you three in that measure of expertise across the room, because the issue we're talking about today is something you've already picked up and mentioned in your introductions. We're talking about young people, skills, entrepreneurship, and innovation in Africa. And it's something that we are passionate about as well as the AfroCreatives Radio, because we believe in young people. We believe that we are the current leaders right now, and if we are empowered, we are able to change where we are and to bring transformation in the different sectors that we are called to influence, to serve, and to bring impact. So I will start us off by just going into some of the things that we found as we were researching for this. Like, it was really exciting for me to just start thinking along with the team about what it is that we could talk about with such great giants in the room on a day like today. And I found this online. The World Economic Forum, in an article written as part of the Sustainable Development Impact Summit in 2021, put forth that to address youth unemployment, we need to shift youth's effort from seeking jobs to creating marketable opportunities for themselves. What are your thoughts on this, and how do you think that this can be actualized?
Yes, Moses.
Go for it, Moses.
Thank you. Well, when I think about my parents, you were all saying that, okay, you know what, get a good education, do whatever, and get a job, and that I'm still very young, of course, but that has changed completely, utterly. I totally agree. That the mindset must actually be more about being entrepreneurial, and that can still be entrepreneurial in a workspace, but being creative. That it's about providing solutions, and any leader in any organization would know that you place value on people that bring solutions, and not being sort of wedged to maybe how things are being done as well. So I seek after people who are who are solution providers, and that's part of being entrepreneurial as well. So I would say it's about that for me, and making sure that's the drive for the future.
Thank you, Moses.
I just agree with Moses, and I share the same perspective on that. In addition, I would also aim to say, I think for me it's also going back to our origin, our grassroots, or maybe looking into where we come from as Africans and how we used to live back in the days.
Yeah.
And it was always, going out to look for, for food or for a living to be able to sustain your family. And it wasn't really, I think it was very entrepreneurial from way back from, our own culture as African people. And looking at that history and now coming to the present day where we are and all the challenges that we have with, low employment rates across Africa. I think for me, when those two things meet, then that's where the opportunity is, where we have to look at how are we going to prepare young people to be able to bring ideas that are bankable. How are we also going to offer opportunities for young people to be able to access markets? And what skills do they need for us to be able to support? Because this is what's currently happening in the environment. Is so for me, that's sort of my take to say it's not something new. I think we've actually just gone back and then come forward and said, okay, this is what we are and this is where we need to invest. But also what is really important now, and I think it's a great opportunity, is the global village that we are living in. And that really pushes, in terms of market access, knowledge sharing, connections, networks. So let's really, harness all that and be able to support the young people in Africa. And there's so much talent, like Moses has shared.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, thank
That's very true. Thank you so much, Farai. Patrick?
Yeah, thank you. So like the previous speakers have spoken as well, and we all then went back to time immemorial, when we talk about growing up and how things were when we started off. And you'd find that there were certain professions as we were growing up that you knew you probably had to get into. There's probably nursing, being a doctor, police officer, a teacher, and the like. So you went to school knowing that this is what you're most likely to do. So, the system groomed you for that. But now if you look at what's taking place now, there's really nothing that can prepare you for what's ahead of the curve outside of creativity. You just need to teach people to be more creative, exercise their thinking, let it run wild, and then just to prepare for what's ahead of the curve. So I think what we need to be doing for young people now is just allowing that creativity to take place and nurture it, create platforms and spaces where they can just come through and exercise their creativity. Gone are the days where, the kids would ask certain questions and, you'll just tell them, sit, move, don't move, do all this. Now, every child that's there now is going to be asking you why. And, we weren't allowed to ask those questions to our parents growing up, it was considered rude. So now, when they ask why, and having been part of that generation, now we're also now just tempted to say, you don't ask me that, I'm an adult. But now we need to nurture that, nurture the curiosity, let them ask the questions,
that's so
and
right.
then answer them to the best that we can. So I think just creating the spaces and the opportunities for them to just run wild in their creativity, and then nurturing that is what could bring out, the next generation of entrepreneurs and quite possibly jobs as well.
I think one thing that we've noticed now is that, so this may sound crude, but actually, success was defined by, back then, you have doctors, as Patrick was saying, and all of those kinds of stuff. But actually, when you look at the world we're living in now, the creatives and people that are creatives are actually dominating. Actually, in terms of also just in terms of wealth and whatever as well, and that's a fundamental shift. For, I don't know, 50 years, 20 years ago. So parents now realize that actually, it's not just about being the doctor or the whatever.
There's been that shift.
It's another level, a new landscape.
I think a lot has changed, yes, like you're saying, Moses. We are living in such an unpredictable time, Patrick, like what you were saying, where you really have to create spaces for these young people to be creative, because we're constantly living in a time where you are forced to evolve. It's either things are changing around you or you are changing in the environment that you're put into. And taking that into account, how skilled and knowledgeable do you think that our young entrepreneurs are post-COVID, and what entrepreneurial opportunities do you think that personally you've seen or participated in that have opened up in your respective fields? I think I'll start with Patrick this time.
Thank you for throwing me under the bus. It's good that you asked about our fields, because I work a lot with entrepreneurs in the whole visual space, and A25, the innovation hub that we run, and there's a lot of creativity that you see coming through from this space. There, I wouldn't want to. If I've talked about how certain things were not there in my time, I might seem old, but I'm not that old. But having interacted with the young people, there's a lot that's coming out, and in terms of the skills, I'm quite impressed also, because a lot of these things that we are seeing, they're not learning in school. We've got a couple of entrepreneurs that we have had come through our space that probably went as far as A-level, guess maybe never did as well, but then they started coding and doing all these other skills that they can use their hands and their creativity for. And the systems that they're developing are quite impressive, So I think it's not just an issue of, like I said earlier, to then say, when we create these spaces for them and then help them get the necessary context to get the market traction that they require, because as an entrepreneur alone and or as a developer, it's not easy to then penetrate corporate or to then take your ideas to another place where they can easily be adopted, because they now want to know where you've implemented it before. So when we then facilitate those platforms so that they can come through, and then you can then just have them test their ideas with you, and then you run with them, take them to market, it then becomes easier for them to then start generating income from it.
That is true.
I think for me, post-COVID, that's quite interesting. And what I would say is, from the work that I'm doing currently at the British Council and the projects that we launched last year, towards the end of last year, and the work that's coming out now, and the different conversations that I also follow in terms of the arts creative space or innovation space, what I'm realizing, and even speaking to young people, is we took those 2 years and some people actually really then focused on building a particular skill. So people, I think what I'm just saying is, instead of having this broad landscape of skills, which was sort of the norm in the past, where I would learn A, B, C, D, but I think COVID made entrepreneurs to really then zoom into a particular skill set, to really focus on it and then build on it as well. At the same time, I think there was this whole hype around, oh my word, everyone is migrating onto the digital space. And what that space is something that most people have actually learned. And through the learning, the breaking down of the digital space has come into being, where you actually realize, actually it's just not about connecting online. There's this whole world where you are building assets online. There is the transaction happening online. There is the market that's happening online. And also what I really also admired is, where the online space has made some African creatives to feel included and relevant, because in your own physical space you cannot represent yourself as who you are. So on the online space, you actually show up as who you identify as. And I think that has been a really good, sort of the opportunity which people have actually taken forward as young entrepreneurs. So when I also look at all this that is happening, you'd find that the quality of the work has also sort of gone up, and higher institutions have started to also say, okay, how do we now also pivot and innovate with what Patrick is talking about, where everyone is just learning by themselves. And even when you look at the academic, world, the the way that programs or degrees, masters used to be issued out or happen, all that is now changing.
Yeah.
The disruptors coming in. Netflix is offering, a master's degree and technical training certificate. So I think all those things have really sort of, given an opportunity for Africa entrepreneurs to be able to acquire a skill fast, and also something that's really relevant to a field that they're working on. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, Moses?
Yeah, no, I think between Patrick and Farai, said it all. But for me, not to repeat what they just said, but for me, I think during COVID and post-COVID, busted some myths. One, about Africa generally, that actually, we would be back, we would be so disadvantaged because of the lack of connectivity, all of those kind of stuff like that. Actually, young people in Africa rose to the challenge and actually were very creative, totally. So for me, the narrative about Africa changed definitely, and also it inspired confidence in the creatives to actually say, okay, we can do this, and they were creative and came up with many of the stuff that Farai was saying. So for me, that is a profound thing. And again, across Africa, we sort of leapfrogged the analog bit and actually sort of went further as well. So for me, that's another sort of thing as well. And that infuses confidence in young Africans. And we see that in Zimbabwe for the event that we were at, 8 to 5 yesterday as well, and whatever. Absolutely fantastic. So in terms of the sort of skill and whatever, I think it's innate and it's there for sure. And I think the second thing that I see is that, the access to, as Farai was saying, to the wider market, that even though certain markets within Africa may be going through a slight depression or whatever, there is now this other world that you can reach out, and you've got to diversify and be able to sort of connect into other markets so that, whatever as well. And I think that the COVID period has shown that, with the platforms that Farai was saying as well, and just the need for access and also connect with other people as well. So absolutely, I think COVID actually showed the potential, showed the power, and what Africa can do and will continue to do.
I think for me, it's really that celebration of something so painful that came in and rendered the world to our knees, and then there's been so much good that's come out of it. Africa has caught up. It's almost as if it leveled the playing field for Africa, and we could compete with anyone from any place in the world, and it normalized access because the internet is for everyone. So that is so amazing. Now you see with Web 3.0 coming on, the metaverse, now people can work online in such a big way, unlike before. So it's such a win that we can celebrate, I think, for Africa, because it really did that, Moses. It shifted everything. People see Africa differently. So you now see researchers that were talking about Africa being 200 years behind in the next 10 years. Flattened. It's been brought to nothing. So it's really exciting to see what's happening in the world. And it's a fun place to work for a young person like myself, because you're constantly being challenged to evolve. And to
the older
upskill.
generation, that would maybe have thought that, are you really working? Are you really, if you're working online, is that really working? You need to go out and whatever, you're not left because they've been forced to this new path. Then they sort of realize that this is the new world as well. So that's also helped to bridge that gap.
That appreciation.
I interrupted.
It's okay.
You, sorry.
No, that's something with conversation.
So just come in as well. You just spoke about Africa and Africa going out there. Another thing that COVID has done is it has made us realize that solutions are no longer location specific. You can have a solution maybe in Africa for the rest of the world, and this is what entrepreneurs are beginning to do as well. So you've got solutions that are coming out and being scaled globally. So I think that's quite an interesting development that's come up.
Welcome back to the AfroCreatives Radio. where we have conversations for a connected continent. And we are back again in studio. I'm excited to be here. I'm your host, Umind. And in our second season, it's really exciting for us that we're going visual, so you can see my face and you can see that I'm not faking it on the audios when I'm smiling. You know, it's been such a journey. Our first season was so much fun for me, and I've been growing so much. But having you guys here today, I'm so stoked. And going visual, we're breaking new ground, and that's exciting for me.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the second segment, guys. All right, so I'm going to start with Moses and just ask, I think I'm just going to throw in these questions for you guys, and you can just feel free to just jump in and answer as you want. What can be done by the creative entrepreneurs to maximize their chances of attracting investors across Africa?
I was just patiently waiting for Moses to come second. Let me say it's that he'll have nothing to say. Okay. All right. I think one of the things that has to be done, and this is a realization that I've had across the board with most entrepreneurs, is that the entrepreneurship that people get involved in is mainly to, keep the lights on, put food on the table, put clothes on their backs, and no one really thinks big. So even with the creatives, you're going to come into the space, if it's designing that you're doing, if it's art that you're into, if it's music, you're just doing it to put food on the table, but then you don't think about how you can scale to a level where you can then begin to attract more investment into the business, building your own brand and going out there as your brand, and being known for that in the industry. So I think that's one thing that I'll say that entrepreneurs or creatives rather need to be thinking about, to then say that if I'm going to be speaking to investors at whatever level, I'm not thinking about the small deal ticket. To then say that, okay, if you give me this, then I can move from point A to point B and I can survive. It's more about saying that if I think at this level, then this is the possible return that an investor can get. And be able to spell that out to an investor, to be able to say that, if you invest in me, this is what I'm likely to give as a return over this period of time. And that's the thinking that needs to be in the entrepreneurs. And I think there's a whole lot of education that goes into that, financial literacy that has to be taught to them, managing the business and the brand, so to speak, and a whole lot of other aspects that come into it.
Yeah, for those of you that are watching us from home, I'm hoping that you have a pen and a paper and you're just noting this down, because it's such nuggets for us as young entrepreneurs. Anyone else want to jump in on that one?
Yes, I think for me, two things. I believe that creatives, they've a lot, and without a doubt we can see it. But now the investment is where things are lacking. And I'm thinking this is calls for one to be bold and to start flexing yourself to be able to approach those different investors. And like what Peggie was saying, that is about thinking big and realizing that I think it's about also thinking in terms of what is my role and my place in this space that I'm occupying, and where do I want to go. Because for me, I don't think everyone has to go for that big investment, because the way that we look at life and how we are coming in terms of entrepreneurship, we have to be really clear and focused. But at the same time, allow yourself to flex and to be fluid and to move, because things are always changing. So I think having that openness and allowing yourself to just be present in the moment and not letting your challenges pull you down. The second thing is, I think more of what we need to do as creative entrepreneurs is to really connect and collaborate. That came out for me yesterday during the Art House Creative Hustles that happened at 8 to 5. And that is the biggest investment we can do for ourselves as an individual. Yes, I think let's move away from our heads and thinking that, I can do this by myself, I'm good enough, I don't need to, collaborate with different people. And allow yourself to really connect with people, to grow your network, and just to understand, different perspectives and areas within the social and economic and even the political landscape. It all aids to how you then see the big picture and how you understand different people, be it investors, be it other entrepreneurs, be it organizations like British Council.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I mean, so this is the beauty of coming last after everybody has spoken, because I can just I agree with everybody else. Just keep it simple, which I totally agree with as well. And even if I may say, for where I've sort of invested in projects and in projects myself personally, it's been the fact that actually when you connect with other people as well, it's better to have a 30-40% share of something than have 100% of nothing as well. But one thing I would just add as well is, I think we shouldn't, young entrepreneurs, creatives, shouldn't forget their passion, and that conviction, because I've sat, at many sort of presentations or whatever, and you can tell somebody who's really convinced about what they're doing, and what Patrick was saying about scalability and collaboration, absolutely there, but that conviction needs to be there, and most of the time that's what kind of sort of makes you cross the line, because you can tell that actually this person is really committed to this, they really believe in this, and you can see them that when the challenges come, you can see them actually still going ahead with that as well. So I think in the midst with absolutely all what Patrick and Farai has said, don't lose yourself as well and your conviction. And if you're not convinced about what you're going to pitch, then you shouldn't be pitching it. You need to kind of go back and say, well, actually, am I really whatever? Because people who are going to invest, they will drill down as well. So I would just add that to it.
So very true, guys. We need to really carry on and just show that passion. What are you passionate about? Does it show? Do you carry conviction in what you're doing? We over here at the AfroCreatives Radio are very passionate. We're passionate about the work that we're doing, and we love young people, and you can see it. But we are very passionate about what we do. We believe in this completely. Young people in Zimbabwe have a problem that they've been facing. They have to contend with so much more than the usual. Access to finance and markets because of the ongoing inflation. How can we be practically innovative and sustainable?
Okay, that's true. Yeah, Zimbabwe is just it's a unique environment, and it takes time for one to really understand, the context and the different devils that you're dealing with in terms of the economics, the taxation, the inflation, and how things can just switch overnight. Yeah, and I think with that environment, what I would say it's a practical, and this is where I see most people migrating to, and even us on our programs. That's what we've also done, is to say, look, yes, the environment is not good, but Zimbabwe does not, exist on its own. Yeah, let's take advantage of the new currencies that are digital that have come in, and we have run training programs to help creatives understand what is blockchain, what is cryptocurrency, what is an NFT, how do you access or become part of that currency and use it in terms of advancing your art, and also running your own creative business. Your payment, you mustn't always think of it as, oh, I need to get this payment in a Zimbabwe currency, which is multi-currency, So that's what we have done as a practical thing, to say it's a global village, and there are all these opportunities that are coming in. So how do you actually leverage on those? The other one is also the opportunity which exists is looking at countries like Zambia, South Africa, Botswana, where you're able to transact in those spaces, and you are able to get investment, not from Zimbabwe, from other players, and you're able to use those stable markets for you to be able to advance yourself. But also what I really liked speaking to other creatives is when they get paid in the Zimbabwe context and your money is in this country, invested in your equipment, in things that are tangible, and not sort of sit on it, because the inflation, we all know our Zim dollar inflation against the other currencies, it's really a nightmare. So those are some of the practical things that we have done as British Council in our creative enterprise programs.
Excuse me. When you asked the question, I looked at Farai and she smiled, and I started smiling as well, because I was hoping she would then turn to me and say, Patrick, you're from Old Visual, give a financial institution. You spoke about inflation and all these things. Because I wouldn't want to respond at that level. When speaking about entrepreneurship, the playing field is slightly different. And this is what I'd say to that. If you're going to decide to play football, for example, the game has rules. You go in there and you abide by the rules. If you don't, you get disqualified, you get a red card, whatever the case may be. With any sporting discipline, that's what happens. And so it applies it to everything else as well. If you're going to do entrepreneurship in the Zimbabwean context, there's the macro environment that you are subjected to. So that's the playing field that you have, and you need to work within the parameters of whatever's taking place in that playing field. So you can't then come in and say, because inflation is high, I'm not going to do this, because I can't get access to finance, then I'm not going to start my business, I can't do ABC because the banks are doing this. Then you blame it on the banks, you blame it on government, you blame it on private sector, you blame it on the development partners that you might want to be engaging with. You can't do that. If you decide to get into business, you know the setup, you know the situation that you're in, you know the macro environment that you're operating in. Now, what you need to do is then tweak the business that it fits those parameters. And you're able to work within them and still make profit within that environment. How that can be done could be a broader conversation probably for another day, but that's what people need to be thinking about today. Say, how do I work within the system and what the system has thrown at me?
I mean, from an outside, and look, I've lived in Zimbabwe not during this time, and both Patrick and Farai and others know this, but I mean, I think also there needs to be realization. Zimbabwe context is different, but actually it is not unheard of. And the issue of inflation and whatever cuts across a number of countries, Sudan, Nigeria to a certain bit or whatever. So I think, also we shouldn't be looking at, war is us. It's only here and whatever as well, because then now you're whatever. So I think that, and as Patrick was saying, that's the environment, whatever. Maybe it's more pronounced here at certain times. So that's one thing. But also, I think, Patrick, you do need to mention the other bit about the financials, because to be successful as a business, you have to really look into and say, okay, where are my finances going for what I'm getting? Where is it going? And actually, if a lot of it is going in this particular area, now that's an opportunity for me to actually be creative around that and actually do whatever, because that's what a business would do. During COVID, a lot of people then reassessed their finances, made adjustments and whatever. And I think so there's that practical thing that you must do as an entrepreneur, because you're running a business as well. And I think the second thing is that, look, things come in seasons, and you can't wait until the environment gets favorable to move, as Patrick was saying. This is the time to actually be able to say, because by the time the environment is getting better and favorable and all of those kind, other people are already moving in that direction, and you're then starting to think, okay, now it's time to work. It's the time to really incubate and really plan for that change, because the change will happen and things will get better.
That's true. And if you also think about it, I mean, entrepreneurs are not like corporates. These are small teams. It's easy to pivot in any environment. Corporates need to go through boards. You need to continue to share. Before you can then put your strategy. For entrepreneurs, you wake up this morning, you meet as a team, you just decide this is the direction that we're taking now. And it's easy to pivot within the environments.
I would aim to say also, I think what I've also seen is the value that you place on yourself as a creative, the skills, the techniques, the outputs that you give. Most people tend to under-invoice themselves, but it's actually also killing your business. So I think it's really understanding, the financial literacy and being able to know the value of this is what I cost. Put it on the table and don't sort of undervalue just because you're
Yeah.
And that happens. We've seen it happening here in Zimbabwe and even in across Africa, where it's really still a process that we need to get on to stop undervaluing yourself in terms of your financial. Yeah.
How can Africa nurture and support its innovators when there's a neglect of the creative industries in mainstream economic development and education and skills policies? I mean, you look at it and you think the creative industries have really felt like there's a place where there's neglect when you look at your creative entrepreneurs in Africa. How can we nurture that?
I think that's an interesting question. But there's one thing that we need to realize now, and the bias that we normally have as we think innovation, we think entrepreneurship is more tech focused. And we then tend to think about developers, the next app, the next platform, marketing will do payments and all these things. But when you bring in the creative aspect, there's no computer that can be creative. Yes, there's artificial intelligence, and there are steps towards trying to make computers think creatively, but you can't. There's no computer that can compose like a classical piece. There's no computer that can draw art, from a creative perspective. So that's one thing that we now need to consider and see how big the creative space is, in the sense that there's no computer that can really replace the human mind and how it thinks, sees things, visualizes them, and then interprets them. So we now need to then just tap into that and then see how do you then monetize that. One person's creativity. You've seen a rock and you have sculpted it into whatever it is, and now you want to sell it. So that creative space, I think, does have a lot of potential. And what we now need to be doing is to then see how we can then maximize and bring out that potential in the creative sense. I think I just want to throw it back to the creatives, and I think we spend a lot of time, and it's years now, underplaying that the policies or the institutions, the ministries, the government, and they're neglecting us. And I think that's not a true picture of what exactly is on the ground. It starts from engagement. That's my push to say, when you look at Africa Union, when you look at even the Zimbabwe different ministries that house our arts and culture, even if it's split, it's not ideal, but they do speak to enabling this space. And then when you also look at the private sector, there's big investment that is coming in.
Right.
Where are we engaging with all those things? Even when you look at the Inter-Africa Trade Agreement, where are we in those conversations? So I'm flipping it back to creatives, artists, and saying, let's engage. And when we are meeting different stakeholders and going into different platforms, be knowledgeable and be able to show up and be on the table and discuss in terms of, trade markets understand what those policy documents are. What is the AU trying to do? And I find that engagement is not there. I'm not saying it's perfect in terms of the policy, the environment, no. But I think I want to give credit where it deserves. That our governments in Africa, our key institutions which control this space, they're really also making an effort to try and support the creative industries to grow.
I mean, I totally agree with Farai. I think when you look at any movements that shifted something, no disrespect, it doesn't come from those state parastatals or the policies, or it actually comes from that movement or from that group of people as well. And I think there's something. I remember being in Malawi and talking to some creative a network of creative entrepreneurs a few years ago, about 3 years ago. And they were talking about government doesn't do this and whatever. And I was just saying, but are you speaking the language of government? Are you actually saying to them actually, because tax is a big thing. If you want them to really whatever you're saying, actually, we are willing to pay taxes, we are willing to, and you're seeing, as Farai was saying, what is what is their drive, what is their objective, what's their motivation, and with that being being savvy about, okay, you've got to address that issue as well, and actually sometimes, with that engagement that you're saying, you're saying, okay, no, actually we want you to look at, tax for creatives, or in these areas, or concessions. Not that we're not going to be contributing to the pot, we will be, and that opens up the kind of minds as well. So there's something about being smart.
Yes.
There's something also being saying that actually, and you've got to almost take it in your hands and begin to push that, and as Farai engage, and being smart in the engagement as well. See what the motivation of the other side is, and you've got to then sort of address that, and rather than just say from my angle only. And I think that's the way that we're going to get movements on both sides.
That's a holistic way of looking at it. Guys, it's back to us as creatives. Are you engaging? Do you understand the language? Are you speaking the same language as these government funding bodies and private sector? Do you understand what it is they stand for as much as you want them to understand who you are? That's back to us creatives. Let's think about it, and you can hit us up in the comment sections. You can talk to us and let us know what you think about this conversation that's happening right now. And as we come to a close, I want to ask each of you, what would you say to a younger generation of rising artists and young people from your own life experiences imparting?
Funny enough, I was asked the same question by a young creative that they fit. What I would say is something that I grew up in from my mom, and it's really, show up. Just show up and put the work. And now I think it's also about being smart. Don't really have entitlements or expectations that things should be done for you and all that. But I think for me, it's really show up and engage, grow your network, and also understand the environment. But don't let the environment, like Zimbabwe, get into your head, because that will just cripple your creativity, your innovation, and how you actually see, the rest of the world. Those would be my parting words.
Thank you so much, Farai.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, now I've listened to a lot of pitches before, like so many. I get tired of listening to them at times. People come to me, Patrick, 2 minutes of your time begins up being 30 minutes. And there's one common thing that I've heard through most of the pitches that people present is that, when they come, they'll be like, I've got this small idea, I've got this small business that I'm doing. And I'm thinking, so why is it worth my time if it's small? So like Farai was saying, show up. And I would then put it across this way to then say, don't think your idea is too small. Your idea is only as small as you present it, or it can be as big as you present it. So when you're coming through, for any investment, or if you are sharing your idea with anyone, it's a big thing. You thought about it in your creative mindset. And if you then see it through as a big idea, and then just put all the pieces in place to then show how you paint the picture of that big idea, it's then worth someone's time to listen to and then guide you through the process of bringing it to life. So I think in all the presentations with creatives, young entrepreneurs out there that they're thinking of making to investors, then always present your idea as something that the other person needs to listen to. Don't begin by saying, I've got this small idea, and already I'm thinking, I've got big things that I'm working on. So why should I be listening to the small idea? Present it big.
That's true. Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, I think own it. I think you got to own it, and you got to own what you're presenting, and even at times you've got to, as Patrick was just saying there, you've got to own it in a way that even if they're gonna say no, you're not doing something that, okay, it's dependent on you, I'm so desperate, whatever, because you really believe in that. So that sense of ownership, and also that, look, you're not saying, okay, we are waiting for the government to come, this person to come, whatever, because this is something that you really own. For me, is absolutely key. absolutely key. Yeah.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules, because I know you have such a busy schedule and big things. Patrick, big things that you are doing to come and sit with us here at the AfroCreatives Radio. It's been such a pleasure and an honor to have you. Guys, if you are a young entrepreneur and you're passionate about innovation, you want to upskill and get yourself some information, you've been here with us. There's so much that has been said. I really hope that there's something you can take with you and really sit down with. Your idea is not a small one. That, I think for me, that's something that I'm taking home with me. I have big ideas, and our brain, like Patrick said, we have the biggest machine on the earth that's constantly evolving under any circumstance. And as creatives, we get to harness and we get to work with this brain. So use your brain for amazing things and think big. I'm your host, Umind, and until next time, it's goodbye for now.